Welcome back to this Friday edition of InfoWars Nightly News. Now, our guest today is Professor Dr. Francis Boyle. He's had a long bio, but he's represented the government of Bosnia-Herzegovina in stopping the UN from breaking up their country. He's helped write major global U.S. bioweapons treaties. And, of course, he also has several degrees from Harvard and was given the same training in the same area as Henry Kissinger. So he's worked in close with these people. He's aware of their program, and he is a guest that we always find very informative when he comes on the radio show with us. But here he is on the Nightly News. And I wanted to get him on about the NDAA, the SOPA Act, the 30,000 drones they're funding to go in the skies, saying they're going to watch farmers with them. I mean, it is like a bad nightmare. And he studied the path to authoritarianism. And so I want to get his take historically on where he sees us going and ways to hopefully reverse this. Because along with the authoritarianism, the thugs don't just want to dominate their domestic slaves. They always look at the greener grass. They want wars, because war is the health of the state. People shut up. They do what they're told. You can have no bid contracts, and you can be big war heroes. And so now the United States, England, Europe has just been swallowed by the same type of expansionistic stuff that we saw from people like Hitler. And a lot of people, bring up Hitler. Oh, it's like Hitler. No, this really is like Hitler. Or other expansionists. Julius Caesar. I'd say Stalin, but he mainly just killed his own people and did some expansionist stuff. But it's just incredible. So he joins us to talk about that. Then I want to get into his experience with the UN up close and personal. Because some people say the UN's going to save us, and the very same military-industrial complex created it. I don't see that as the case, but we'll get Professor Boyle's take on it. Doc, it is great to have you here with us tonight. So much is going on since I talked to you a month ago. Unfortunately, everything you've written in your books warning people is coming true in spades.
Well, thank you very much for having me on, Alex. My best to your audience. Right, it looks as if we've seen the pattern here, as I said before, that after 9/11, the financial elite in America has decided to go for broke. They went to first Afghanistan, Iraq. Obama went after oil and gas in Libya. Now they are going after Syria, and it looks that will be a lead up to Iran, which could set off another world war. It's an extremely dangerous situation right now in Syria. The neoconservatives, the Straussians, have always had their eyes on Syria to knock it off. I served as legal advisor to the Syrian delegation to the Middle East peace negotiations in 1991. Now, I haven't worked for the Syrians since then, but they did ask me to draft their opening position in the peace negotiations, which would have been full peace for full withdrawal. Of course, they got nowhere with the Likud government under Shamir. But when Rabin was elected prime minister, very rapid progress was made to a comprehensive peace agreement between Israel and Syria, along the lines of the peace agreement Israel had with Egypt. So it was ready to go. And there were elections coming up in the spring of 1996, and Rabin concluded that he would present that peace treaty to the Israeli Knesset after the elections. The votes were there, but he would wait until after the elections because it was a major development. There'd be a lot of debate. And he began to run, this was late 1995, on a peace platform. He had concluded the Declaration of Principles with the Palestinians. He had a peace agreement with Jordan. He had a peace agreement in his pocket with Syria. And that then would have certainly led to a peace agreement with Lebanon. So everything could have been tied up. And then, as you know, he was murdered by his own religious fundamentalists and right-wingers over there. Netanyahu was elected prime minister, and there has been no forward progress at all since that point in time. We use these fundamentalists whenever we think it is useful, as in Libya and now in Syria. And yes, the agenda in the case of Syria is simply to destabilize Syria and perhaps crack it up into its constituent units, as they did with Afghanistan, as they've done with Iraq, as they've done with Libya, and just break it up into small little pieces short of a nation state that really then cannot stand in the way of the objectives of the United States, Britain, France, Israel. Remember, France was the former colonial power here. It's ridiculous to think that they could care less about human rights in Syria. And the same way with Turkey. Before France, Turkey was a former colonial power. So they're all working together, and they're happy to use these Muslim fundamentalists. Indeed, today's Financial Times has a big story about how we are now shifting all the Muslim fundamentalists in Libya that overthrew a nationalist regime there under Gaddafi. We're now transferring them over to Syria. So it's very clear it's the same people, same agenda.
And then separately saying we've got to have 30,000 drones in the skies, highway checkpoints, TSA getting in our space, groping us because Al-Qaeda is going to get us. And then they're using the very Al-Qaeda to commit assassinations and bombings in Iran. They just play the public like the public's totally ignorant. And I guess because the media has played along with the deception, the public is ignorant. It's just, it's so absurdist that we're told, give our rights up, Al-Qaeda will get us. And Al-Qaeda across the board is this clandestine CIA, Mossad, MI6 secret army, same type folks they used to overthrow Mossadegh in '53. You and I know the history, you to a greater extent in many cases than I. It's just cartoonishly obvious.
They are going for broke to control and dominate the world. And they're going to grab all the oil and gas they can, everywhere they can, and literally break up any states that stand in their way or that have created them problems for them before. Indeed, Wolfowitz, the neocon, had me at the, well, actually, he was at the University of Chicago when I was there, said this after 9/11. Publicly, he said, we are going to start to break up states. And the first state they broke up was Afghanistan, then Iraq, now Libya, looks like Syria, and then Iran.
But Wesley Clark said that too. He's talked about, he was in the meeting and they said, yeah, we're going after these 8 countries. And
I think that's what the Pentagon, apparently Wesley Clark was at the Pentagon, and that's what they told him. And when Wolfowitz said, we're going to be breaking up states, he was deputy to Rumsfeld. He was the #2 guy in the Pentagon. So that simply confirms what I'm saying. Yes, that's the agenda here. And what is going on, all these states have control of oil and gas and transportation modes for oil and gas. Cheney already publicly stated that they were going to blame the next major terrorist attack here in the United States on Iran, no matter who was responsible. So you're certainly correct. There will probably be some type of false flag attack. Blame it on Iran. Use it as justification for war against Iran. Of course, Congress will salute and ship out. We very well might get a formal declaration of war, which we do not have now. But if there is a formal declaration of war by Congress, you might as well kiss the Constitution goodbye. There's an entire title of the United States Code that automatically gets activated and makes the President of the United States of America a constitutional dictator, just like FDR was during World War II. We have not been in that situation yet, although we do know after 9/11 Bush did ask Congress to give him a formal declaration of war, and they refused to do so. They gave him a limited authorization to use military force. They also had the USA Patriot Act, which is the blueprint for the U.S. police state. That was being held up in Congress by Senators Leahy and Daschle, and all of a sudden they got hit with super weapons-grade anthrax coming from illegal U.S. Military stockpiles. And media sources also got hit to make it clear to the media that they better not be going after this story. So the media have already go along with the cover-up on the anthrax. Yes.
Yeah, look, Dan Rather got some. It was all their enemies. The guys that took photos of Bush's daughters drunk here in Austin, they got hit. And it's Dr. Boyle. We really appreciate the time. I want to talk about some of your latest books and things that are available and tell folks the titles of those. Very, very scholarly, but also riveting reading.
Well, for our current situation here in America, I've written 2 books that I think could get people oriented, and that would be Tackling America's Toughest Questions, Clarity Press, and then the second, Protesting Power, War, Resistance, and Law. How to use law and the Constitution to oppose further warfare here by the United States government and a police state. So I've written 15 books, but I think those would be the 2 most relevant to our current plight. And indeed, that's why I wrote those 2 books, to try to provide some light and a direction out of where we are now.
The generals, the colonels I talked to, the CIA people that were actually in combat in Vietnam, people that live in the real world, they're all against these wars, the drones, the police state, the NDAA. And a lot of these people, like you were saying, aren't completely moral or perfect or even good guys. They live in the real world. And so the entire military is against all these wars and where we're going. Kind of like the German military didn't want to go into Russia. Not that they were even good, it's just that they were living in the real world. Hitler wasn't. Now we have all these academics and people who understand statecraft, deception, manipulation, but they still don't understand the real nuts and bolts. And so you have the bureaucratic elite and the corporate owners who are becoming more and more detached from reality and who make 40-to-1 bets, like Corzine, trying to command a military and a huge system through their arrogance to launch something. And I know they're watching these shows, at least their minions are. They need to understand there's a reason the military's against this here and in Israel. There's a reason the British military's against it, because they're living in the real world. And it is so creepy. I mean, hundreds of years ago, the problem was the generals wanted wars because they'd be superstars, and the politicians had to hold them back. Now it's the other way around. The politicians are so crazy, they want to launch wars that are so huge and so dangerous, even the generals don't want a part of it. I mean, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think that, the military is used by these elites. If you read Kissinger, he had nothing but contempt for them, for the generals and the rest of them. He couldn't care less. And I think that's true for the elites, Mrs. Clinton, all the rest of them. Their children, their husbands, they don't serve in the military. So as far as they see it, they're just sort of a mercenary throwaway class to be used as they see fit.
Yeah, Kissinger called them dumb animals.
That's correct. And that, I went through the same program at Harvard that produced Kissinger, Brzezinski, Huntington, Schelling, all the rest of them. That's their attitude towards the military. They're supposed to do what they're told to do. And I think, at least the military understands the consequences of these decisions. Again, we had a very courageous guy like Admiral Fallon say there would be no war against Iran on his watch.
Well, Mullen went over to Israel and in a public speech said, you guys staged the USS Liberty. Don't do that again. This was an incredible shot against the bow. That means the Pentagon has intel that the Likudniks are looking to stage something.
That's true.
Professor Boyle, that was a great interview, and I hope we turn this around so we don't end up being political prisoners. I think if they start trying to round folks up, though, down the road, even in a war, I don't think everybody's going to line up and do what they're told. It's just quite a mess we're headed into.
I'm afraid it is, and all we can do is keep struggling. And those two books I mentioned will try to give your listeners some information and background and materials that they can use to formulate their own opinion and their own conscience as to what they should do now. Right, because we're facing a World War III and a military police state right in the face.